I just think the basic premise of Bitcoin just doesn't sit right for me. There's no taking away from, you know, the kind of evolution in terms of the mainstream demand for it. It's here to stay. But the very principles, the fact that you can't value this thing. Well, I don't think you can value this thing. It's purely driven by, you know, market sentiment, you know, either fear or greed. And for me, that's always a risky bet to be taking. You know, basic behaviour is encoded generation after generation after generation. So the way we learn as organic beings is that experience that we learn, if we don't get wiped out, you know, is encoded in our DNA, and that's passed on to the next one who learns and then encodes that. You can't replicate that with AI at the moment. And AI potentially is just that next evolution of our own self-imposed like hubris, right? It's like if we leave it long enough, AI will solve the climate problem, right? AI will solve the financial crisis. AI will solve poverty, right? No. I mean, it won't. You know, people will solve people problems, right? With the help of tools like this. We need to find like meaning and happiness within ourselves, you know, in order to counteract the pressures of modern living.
Welcome to another episode of Big Risk Energy. And on this week's episode, I am blessed to be joined by the one and only Mark Stanton-Bennett. Mark is the Chief Technology Officer of Connected and the co-founder of Kiln. Mark, thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure.
So I'm going to put myself out on a limb here, okay? This podcast probably comes out in about 5 weeks time, okay? So Bitcoin's been on an unprecedented bull run over the last 5 weeks after me advising everyone to go and buy. Yeah. But you are still skeptical.
I am skeptical. Yeah, I just think the basic premise of Bitcoin just doesn't sit right for me. But there's no taking away from, you know, the kind of evolution in terms of the mainstream demand for it. It's here to stay. But the very principles, the fact that you can't value this thing. Well, I don't think you can value this thing. It's purely driven by, you know, market sentiment, you know, either fear or greed. And for me, that's always a risky bet to be taking. For every person that makes money, there's going to be people that lose money on this thing. And the other second thing about it is, you know, predominantly the majority of Bitcoin's owned by very few people. And again, that coming from the background I come from, you know, those things just don't sit right with me. You know, too much power concentrated in the hands of a few. We know how that ends up, right?
What do you mean? That's always worked perfectly before.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so they just, you know, for me, it just doesn't work on a number of levels. In terms of like the underlying technology though, you know, it's like I'm bullish. I'm bullish on Bitcoin. I'm bullish on digitization. I'm bullish on, you know, tokenization, real world assets. I think there's some great use cases for that. You know, and other cryptocurrencies as well. Stable coins I'm a big fan of. I think there's a mechanism there to do some really interesting stuff around, you know, democratizing certain, let's say, walled, you know, institutions and sectors for sure. You know, money transfers, you know, is a good example. You know, high fees. You know, I think, you know, stablecoin potentially, you know, leads the way to really reducing and democratizing, you know, access to money and capital for people that haven't had that before.
And do you think that the, you know, inevitable risks and failures and people losing a lot of money that will come with people investing in this as an asset will threaten the potential usage of the technology?
I think it already has, right? We saw in the crypto winter, like, you know, you know, it's been bandied about so much, but, you know, that kind of negative sentiment that's been generated because of the crypto fallout has really undermined, you know, like the work that some amazing people are doing in that space, you know, on the underlying technologies of blockchain, you know, effectively. It's set it back years. You know.
And do you think the overinflated value of some markets attributed to crypto, and for example, let's say the NFT market, right? The art market was never that big. Do you think those things will have done irrevocable damage?
I don't think it's irrevocable. I don't think anything's irrevocable. You know, everything recovers, right? There's a natural evolution to it. Everything comes in cycles. I mean, you could apply this to any financial instrument. You know, you look at like what was the first like commodity, like tulip bulbs. Right, there was wars over that stuff.
Absolutely, us in the Netherlands.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, so you know,
there's two, wasn't there?
Yeah, probably. There's probably many more as well. But it's like, you know, you kind of like, you know, in terms of all of these types of instruments, there's an evolution in financial markets, and Bitcoin is a step in that evolution. You know, it's just Bitcoin itself, the way it stands right now. It's like just I mean, personally, like, you know, I'm you know, more than happy, you know, to discuss and have debate, and, you know, and there's people that kind of, you know, would have a completely contrary view to me, and that's fine also, right? So, But I think as long as that debate is happening and people are being transparent and we're putting that stuff on the table, then, you know, there's potential to kind of maybe, you know, come up with some solutions for the shortcomings, right? Just in my view.
Yeah.
You know? Again, you know, I'm much more of a fan of Ethereum, you know, but, you know, again, I just like the mechanism around that. I think the ability to take money out now, so you can stake and take money out, is a big step forward and actually kind of, you know, sort of making that a kind of grown up currency effectively, or grown up approach to digital currency.
And with your background in algorithmic trading, what do you think is the big difference? What prevents you being excited by Bitcoin as an investable asset versus other asset classes that you were involved with?
Well, again, I think the inherent risk. I mean, for me, I struggle to be able to kind of analyze the risk associated with Bitcoin.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there, you know, apparently successfully trading this thing and using standard methodologies to do it, you know, technical analysis. But it's like, when I look at it, it's like I just find it, you know, very difficult to kind of decide where do I start in terms of like trying to value this thing. If I can't value it, then it's like, well, I can't really start to sort of try and work out to predict what it might or might not do, you know, and, you know, nothing's written in stone, but I think it is very, very much an instrument that's sentiment driven.
Well, that's it. And the thing is, you know, you see so many massive spikes or dips off the back of, and you can see there's a lot of market manipulation in this, in terms of people who are probably shorting Bitcoin, managing to get things in the press of, you know, China's about to block Bitcoin, all these things. And you can see there is massive day trading activity based around that sentiment, which does make it quite unstable, but still, nonetheless, 5 weeks of bull run. Yeah,
and then the other thing, I mean, let's be honest about it. You know, like Bitcoin's not unique in that. Again, historically, you know, people have manipulated markets for their own gain, right? I mean, there's, you know, I'm not going to name names, but you know, there's definitely people out there who will be running a certain position and will do exactly the same thing on any other asset class too, right? They'll try and drip feed news that either supports the position that they're running, either long or short, right? So Bitcoin's not unique in people wanting to move the market in their favor. For me, it's just that inherent inability to kind of work out where is the true price of this thing.
Okay, all right, we can tick off Bitcoin from the buzzword bingo that we're playing today.
Buzzword bingo.
You know the next one I'm going to.
Well, let's try AI.
Absolutely, that's it. Okay, so we this time last year we were in Palo Alto, actually.
Yeah.
And we're having lots of very interesting conversations around AI. And obviously in the 12 months since then, I mean, we couldn't have predicted how much the groundswell would have been towards AI, generative AI. Challenges, threats. You're also a bit skeptical on AI in terms of the level of, I guess, in terms of the quality of it at this point.
Yeah.
And the perceived applications of it in the mind of the public are probably very far off from actually where it is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, how quickly until this does become what people think it is?
Well, what do people think it's going to be? I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's like everyone's got their version of, you know, like their vision, if you like, of what AI will become. And if we're talking about like true sentience, you know what I mean, the capability to think and behave like a human being, I think we're a long way off. And the more I read about the physiology and the biology of human beings and how we've evolved, and actually not just human beings, any single or multi-cell kind of species, it's like, you know, when you look at that stuff and you look at it, how it's constructed and how it's evolved, you know, it's like, because, you know, basic behavior is encoded generation after generation after generation. So the way we learn as organic beings is that experience that we learn, if we don't get wiped out, you know, is encoded in our DNA, and that's passed on to the next one who learns and then codes that. You can't replicate that with AI at the moment, right? You can't replicate that experience. You can't replicate that feeling, that thought, that organic, you know, kind of mechanism that we use for recall, the way we can associate, you know, memories with not just by kind of image recall, but it's like smells and kind of and feeling and kind of temperature, and you just can't replicate that at the moment within a kind of, if you like, a binary model, which is what it boils down to, right? We don't have an organic, not that I'm aware of, we don't have a fully working organic computer right now. So I know people are using, it's almost like the wrong tool for the job. It's like you're using software to try and replicate that has an organic element to it, right? No one really understands what's going on in the brain. We're far removed from understanding what goes on in the brain. It's so powerful and so complex.
So you might have things which are far more efficient than humans in calculating many things.
Of course.
But recreating sentience is not within our capabilities there. Yeah.
I don't think we're there. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people in Silicon Valley who would like to disagree with me, you know, but I just think just the very complexity of organic life. It's just, I think it's just, we're a long way off replicating that via code effectively.
So one of the conversations we did have in Palo Alto last year was, if we believe that on a long enough time horizon, it is possible, therefore is it not probable that we are already that? We are already a recreation, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've talked about this, haven't we? And, you know, I think, are we living in a very, very sophisticated simulation? It's like, yeah, maybe.
Doesn't make much difference though, right?
Doesn't make much difference. Yeah. Absolutely not, you know, and if it is, then I'm really, really happy. Whoever did it did a really good job.
They're on a great job.
Because I'm having a great time. Yeah, absolutely.
A couple glitches still. You know, a few things they could have done better.
Lazy coding, as you call it.
A bit of lazy coding, exactly that.
A bit of lazy coding, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's sort of, you know, I think the sort of the power or the potential power for good, you know, that this type of technology brings to the world is immense. But, you know, and as again, with, you know, you look at human history and there will be people that will misuse it, right? It's as simple as that.
So, yeah, I think yesterday you have the CEO of DeepMind come out, say, you know, regulate us, please. You've seen Sam Altman do the same for OpenAI. Obviously, far departure from crypto, which is saying, please
don't regulate us,
move away from us. Yeah. So why are these people so worried? Why are these people so forthcoming with their, you know, desire to become regulated and controlled and to slow down?
Yeah, well, I think because of the potential impacts on you know, on the world around us, you know, the ability to kind of use this technology for good or bad. You know, I think, you know, the technology is at a stage where it does have immense power and the potential to affect, you know, very sort of social fabric of kind of, you know, like the way human beings live. And so I think, you know, what they're asking for, and I mean, the cynic in me says, you know, what they're asking for is to be regulated so that they can carry on making money. I mean, you know, it's sort of like, give us some boundaries, you know, rather than waiting for someone to really have a crackdown, you know, and that restricts what they want to do from a commercial perspective. But that's just the cynic in me. But also,
it's probably a big part of that.
Yeah, but maybe these guys are close enough to technology that they understand better than I. Probably better than you and I, like exactly
better than me.
Where the capabilities are right now, and maybe it does scare them a little.
Because I think there's two parts here, right? There's the idea of AI as achieving sentience, but you don't need it to be sentient for it to do some real damage.
No, absolutely not. And I think, you know, if you talk about like AI as an evolution, you know, why are we even talking about like the end game being, you know, replication of human sentience? Maybe AI becomes an evolution. You know, in terms of a being with its own constraints itself, right? Because that's where we're kind of moving to right now, right? It's like, so maybe it's not replacing humans. Maybe it becomes
improving on them.
Well, improving on them, but it's, you know, it's an evolutionary path itself, right? So maybe it's a new type of being, right? That we'd have to learn to coexist with.
And what do you think I mean, it's a scary thought, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a scary thought because for sure they are going to replace us in most jobs then, if that is the case, if it's, you know, peaceful coexistence we're looking for. What, maybe this is going slightly outside of your expertise, but let's ask the question. From a governmental perspective then, if we fast forward 10, 15 years, we had a really interesting conversation with a founder recently who is the creator of the fiber bottle and the co-founder of an eco-packaging company. They are selling 1.2 billion non-plastic products a year to some of the biggest sort of consumer goods manufacturers in the world. And when he painted a picture of where we are in 15 years' time, if we don't stand up to the plastic challenge, it's a pretty scary picture. This guy knows his stuff. 15 years' time, if we don't stand up to the AI challenge, if we have not put things in place to not hamper the progress, but at least, you know, taper it to a point where humanity can catch up to integration, etc. What do you think the world looks like if we don't control it in this way?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to kind of predict what the outcomes could be, depending on the sort of rate of development of the AI and the applications that it's used for, and and what the constraints are around it. I think what we need is just common sense and a measured approach. That what we're developing, we understand it. I think that's first and foremost. I think for me, it's I think there's still a lot of black box out there, right? And so we need to fully understand, what the capabilities are. And what those impacts and threats are. And I think it just, I think self-regulation is a really good starting point. But I think also like what we need from the big tech companies that are leading this is true transparency, because otherwise people just fill in the gaps. Yeah. Right. People make their own mind up. Yeah. What does I don't see a doomsday. I generally don't. I'm an optimist by default. I don't see a Terminator doomsday scenario in 10 to 15 years.
Which is a shame because we'd get some great movies.
We would get some great movies, yeah. And then me running around in combats, like being chased down by some flying metallic spaceship would be quite interesting, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, it's where we'll be with it in 15 years. I hope we've kind of harnessed it, like I say, for good, And I think the thing about AI actually, and the thing about just I think like the general like response to technology by modern society. I think actually the dangerous thing is not the technology itself. I think it's our response to that technology in terms of our own sort of like hubris around technology. So it's like instead of like doing the right thing, let's just take planet Earth, right? Let's just take the sort of the impact and destruction that we're having on the natural world around us, right? Which actually, let's be honest about it, no one can deny, right? Yeah. Let's just be honest about it, right? We're destroying the world. The human beings are responsible for major mass extinction events, and a lot of that, is kind of today is driven by this idea that it's not my problem, right? Technology will save us from ourselves at some point, right? And AI potentially is just that next evolution of our own self-imposed like hubris, right? It's like if we leave it long enough, AI will solve the climate problem, right? AI will solve the financial crisis. AI will solve poverty, right? No. Do you know what I mean? It won't. Yeah. People will solve people problems, right? With the help of tools like this. So maybe you can use AI to identify where, more efficiently where you need to put aid, where you need to build water pumps, where you need to, great, amazing. That's exactly what it should be used for. But if we all sit on our hands and just assume that the next technology is going to save us, we're on a very, very dangerous path.
Yeah, but I think this is nothing new for humanity, right? In the same way that you have people who smoke 20 cigarettes a day and then the NHS will save me, whatever it might be, or, have terrible diets or smoke vapes. I smoke vapes, so I count myself as part of this. But it's a self-destructive tendency that we have on a micro level, and therefore we have it on a macro level as well.
And where do you think that self-destructive tendency comes from? Because if you think about the reverse of what I've just described, like, the sort of living in modern society, I think is quite alien to how we were designed and programmed in the first place.
For sure.
Which is why I think that is a reaction to that, right? And so it's like, so maybe the solution is, like trying to get back, to being more integrated with the world around us instead of fighting it.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Because I think what you had in a, pre-modern era, let's say, is ultimate accountability for your own life. Yeah. Right? If you didn't eat, you didn't kill, you didn't...
You died.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas psychologically now we have to contend with, I don't need to do anything.
No.
Therefore, what am I going to do?
And then, so a lot of these issues, I think, which you alluded to, it comes from that we still have that self-defense mechanism, that fight or flight mechanism. And trouble is it's being used for the wrong purpose, right? Because there is no threat, right? There is no threat, but we're looking for threats, what's the probability of kind of, I don't know, being killed by someone in the street? It's still very low.
Yeah, of course.
As opposed to, not having enough food to eat and starving. Like
yes. That's why meditation
years ago.
That's why meditation and shrinking your amygdala is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reduce the fight or flight mechanism.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So let's continue on that route to self-destructive behavior, leading to destruction of the planet. How much has the instant gratification and convenience of modern technology. Now, it's different for myself and for yourself. We didn't grow up with the level of convenience that we have now. I'm probably the last generation that can say that. I think, not quite. I mean, MSN, which changed the way that I interact with my friends, I started using when I was probably 9, 10 years old. Ultimate convenience, Deliveroo, everything else, Uber, a bit later than that. But considering, as you said, behavior is hard-coded into DNA, what can be done, and you've got kids, what can be done to, peel away that reliance, that instant gratification, that convenience, which ultimately has harmful impacts on the way we interact with the world around us? What can be done to reverse that or control that?
I think it's maybe taking a step back down from that, actually, which is, I'm not a naysayer. I think, social media, again, has positives, but also has, is obviously having a very negative effect as well on some people. And I think it's sort of stepping back. And for me, stepping back means like being aware of these kind of comforts or these things that we rely upon today without even think about it. And taking some responsibility to kind of find some balance, that again, technology is not the be all and end all. It's not going to solve everything for me. I was brilliant. Like I was watching something last week, and I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of the late Anthony Bourdain, right?
Oh, loved him.
Right. I mean,
what a guy. What a guy.
And he was talking about like exactly what we're sort of saying here, which is, what we're being trained in is accepting mediocrity. Right? Because I can walk into a supermarket and I can buy a tomato any day of the week. Whereas like not so long ago, you had to wait for tomatoes to come into season, right? And you get the best, right? That's gone, right? So it's like we're sort of trading, if you like, I would say sort of contentment, if you like, in kind of practicing, if you like, I guess what we're talking about is this stoicism, right? Like that kind of idea of patience and, towards, what we're trying to achieve in the world around us and how we fit within that, right? To on demand, without any thought, behind that. And I think that's it takes us down quite a dangerous path, because what it's breeding is just a total lack of responsibility.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And when you've got no responsibilities, then it starts to blur the lines between what's right or wrong, And it's like, and then what creeps in is this kind of false sense of entitlement, and then you end up like not doing anything, blaming the world around us for everything that's wrong in your life. You're not taking responsibility for it. And I think, that's a big driver for what we've talked about, which is the increase in mental health issues, increase in addiction issues, because we're no longer functioning as we were designed as human beings. And we go looking for things to make us feel better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're so desensitized by the world around us.
And I think in a world where we have less accountability and responsibility, we lack identity.
Yeah, agreed.
As well. And when you lack identity, that's when, the ego is so desperate to say, well, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, that you're doing things that don't fit with your value system in order to feel like you are something and this is who I am, this is my place in society.
Correct, yeah.
I think a lot of people do get in trouble that way. And I think it's a lot of reasons why we have division is because when identity or when values are threatened, it means identity is threatened.
Yeah.
And identity death is the same as real death.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. Super interesting. One thing that you mentioned, by the way, Anthony Bourdain, love that. I was actually trying to watch some of his old stuff the other day, and it's really difficult to find.
There's some stuff on Netflix.
There's some stuff on Netflix, some stuff, but not as comprehensive.
Other streaming services are available.
Yeah, I've searched them. We'll have to discuss after. So, how do people take back control of their lives? How do people start to bring in a sense of accountability, responsibility, and how do people? Because I think it's about self-awareness.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's about self-awareness because where I see people get in the most trouble psychologically and in terms of mental health issues is I think there's one thing about hiding things from others. There's a very, very different thing about hiding something from yourself and not being able to be honest with yourself about your actions, about what you're doing. Yeah. So how do people get back self-awareness and take back control?
I think it starts with kind of making a decision for yourself. And I think you know, if you talk to a lot of people and they're honest about it, I think there's a general sense of, you know, things not quite right. You know, and I think there's a lot of people talk about having a sense of unhappiness is probably going a step too far. But I think it starts with making a decision for yourself that things are not quite right, you know, and then I think it's about finding your own, like I'm going to use the S word, but I think it's about, for me, it's finding your own version of spiritual, you know, some sort of spiritual living or spiritual growth. Yeah. You know, and for me, that does mean getting back to being in touch with the world around me and actually trying to treat every living thing as an equal, which may sound a bit weird.
No.
But actually, you know, the more research that goes on, you know, it's like we really, really don't understand the natural world around us. You know, we've been led by Western scientific thinking, which is very reductionist. You know, it's like if we just keep looking at things in a smaller way, then we can understand and unlock the entire universe. But actually, that's not true. You know, what I see the world as being is a very complex, self-organized system, you know, which is constantly trying to, if you like, negate the effects of the world around it in order to survive, you know, and there's an inanimate intelligence within nature. And so it's like we're missing out on that. And so for me, you know, when I made a decision that I was going to change my life, you know, and I'm happy to talk about that decision.
Please, yeah.
Why I got to that point is to first and foremost decide that, you know, that you know, I'm not the smartest thing on the planet, right? There's other stuff going on here that I don't understand, and make a decision to try and get back in touch with that, you know, and whatever that means for you, you know. But I think we need to find like meaning and happiness within ourselves, you know, in order to counteract the pressures of modern living, you know. Otherwise, we just get swept away by it, you know. And you know, for me, it was there was a defining moment in my life with, you know, I had addiction problems with alcohol, you know, and I spent 30 years battling active alcohol addiction. And actually, when I finally got sober, what was underneath it all was exactly what we were talking about. There was a deep sense of disconnection with the world around me, which drove a deep sense of my own, like, self-loathing. You know, I just wasn't happy with who I was because I had no connection to anything. You know, and you can talk about why that happened, why that didn't happen, you know, and what was missing in my formative years as I was trying to form that kind of bond, you know, with the world around me. The bottom line is, and this is where the responsibility comes from, it's like, I can't change that. I can't change my past. What I can change is what I do today and how I treat myself and others as I move forward through the world and my life, you know. And it's like, so I made a conscious decision, you know, to change my life because I genuinely just wanted to be happy. And it was a really simple choice. It was like, stay unhappy, and I'm not being over dramatic, or die, because that's the way I was heading, right? I was going to lose my life if I continued on that path, or live. And because I wasn't living, I was existing. And so when you make a choice to live, fundamentally you've got to change what that means to you, you know. And very quickly I understood that if I didn't change the way I felt about myself, because that destructive behavior came from me not liking myself very much, then I need to change my relationship with myself and the world around me, you know. And that's what I've spent, if you like, the last 11 years doing. Yeah. You know, and I read and I learn, but every day what I do is I tell myself that I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, right? Because I thought I was the smartest guy on the planet. And thinking I was the smartest guy on the planet might have brought me material success in my career. In fact, it was actively encouraged to be a narcissist, so I was really good at it. And that didn't help either, by the way, because you've got this kind of success on one side, and then you leave the office, and on the other side, I just wonder if I can kill myself. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what did they call it? It was like gold-plated piece of shit. Yeah. That's how I felt, right? You know, it's like, it's just not sustainable, you know? And so, yeah, I kind of, you know, it was a reset moment for me, and then I've used that as a basis, you know, to live my life differently. And actually, that doesn't mean that I can't be successful in a career. It doesn't mean that I don't, you know, that I can't have and want, you know, nice things. But my motivation for having those things has completely changed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an amazing journey. And it must be so liberating when you make that decision to say, well, actually, I'm not going to let my past control my future anymore.
That's exactly it, right? My past no longer defines my present.
Because I think this is it, right? And although, because we've discussed this many times, right? Although the specifics of what the impact on the formative years are is different for everyone. We are all carrying those bruises from things that happened that we might not even remember from, you know, younger than 5 years old. And we all have to, you know, navigate the knock-on effects of that. But once you have that self-awareness to say, well, look, I'm not going to be a victim to them anymore. I'm going to take out control. It's a totally different world.
And it's difficult.
Yeah, of course.
It's difficult because
it's a lifelong journey, right?
And you have to realise that that's what's wrong in the first place. And often people just don't realise, right? There's this sense of not being whole. There's this sense of lack, right? And when we just cover it up with all these distractions. Yes.
And we live in a society which, as you said, really incentivizes us to have that disconnection. Because once you do have that connection, it's very difficult to maintain the same profit motive. You know, in the same way. Because once you have that full connection, you realize how much more there is to the world, and actually doing the faceless money making becomes very difficult. So we have a world which taps into the reward center of deprivation, which says actually happiness will come with the Ferrari, happiness will come with the villa. And many people spend 60, 70 years trying to, you know, get that. And then they have that realization that, you know, that rug pull of, oh, wait, that wasn't what I needed. It was something totally different.
It's you know, I've been there, done it, right? I mean, it was like when I got my first bonus in the city, my first big bonus in the city, there's a Porsche garage on Stratford Road, like, and I went down there. I think it's Stratstones or whatever it's called. Anyway, the Porsche dealership down there, and I because I said, I bought myself a brand new 911, and I went to pick my brand new 911 up. And as I picked my brand new 911 up, there was a 911 Turbo parked outside, a brand new one. I was picking up a brand new 911, a car that costs more than a lot of people earn in a lifetime, and I wasn't satisfied with my brand new 911 because there was a better one sitting at the front, right? And it's like, it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable because
that journey's not going to end.
No, more, right?
Too much is never enough.
And we're just trying to fill that void, right? And actually, the solution to filling the void is becoming happy with yourself.
Yes.
You know, that's how we fill the void. If we're happy with ourselves, we become resilient to what's happening to us, and we stop, you know, being impacted, you know, so impacted, you know, by what's happening around us, you know.
And I think so many people I've spoken to have been on this journey, and things I've experienced myself, is it tends to go, it's almost like the journey of life is initially outward because we're trying to escape from what's inside. It's then inward, you know, to do the clearing up and to do the mopping up, and it's then outward again with a totally different perspective.
Correct.
And it's it's an amazing journey, right? Everyone's got to go through it, I think. And I think we all go through it, some just later than others. And unfortunately for many people, I think it happens on the deathbed.
Correct.
You know, that final moment of introspection, realization that, oh shit, you know, I wish I'd done things differently. So I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to everyone, don't speak on your behalf, is start that journey.
And again, and it's not being preachy either.
No.
Like, because I'm quite passionate about this. It's like, you know, we all deserve, like, happiness. Like, everybody. Like, we all deserve to be happy and content. You know, so but you got to earn it. And it comes back to what we were talking about responsibility, about how do we take responsibility. No one's fucking coming to do it for you, by the way, right? Because the way you earn that self-esteem, how you earn that kind of value in yourself, is by getting off your ass and doing it yourself. You know, and I had a situation with my daughter recently, you know, where, you know, there was, obviously she took the full brunt of, you know, my addiction. You know, it put a gap between us, and we worked really hard to build it. Well, I've worked really hard to build that relationship back, and, you know, and I have a pretty decent relationship with my daughter today, which is lovely, and my son. But it hit Millie particularly hard, and, you know, and then there was a messy divorce, you know, and then, you know, she went through university, came out the other end of university, was in a relationship she didn't want to be in, you know, lost all of, not in contact with her friends, doing a job she didn't want to do. And in the end, she broke, and she phoned me and she said, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. I was like, I'll tell you what to do, but I'm not going to do it for you. Right? And so it's like, you need to tell the guy you're not interested anymore. She said, I can't do that. I said, yes, you can. I said, there's a spare room here. Right? And that evening, she told the guy that she doesn't want to be with the guy anymore. And she phoned the next day and she said, I feel better. I was like, really? You know what I mean? It's like, there you go. And then, you know, she's got herself a new job, which she loves now. She's now living in London. She's got friends. but she's done it herself.
It's amazing.
She's done it herself with my support, but I haven't done it for her, and that's the key.
Yes, you've got it. You can give the tools for resilience, but you can't give resilience.
You can't teach it.
Yes,
you can't give it away, right?
Built.
Well, you can teach it, but I can't give my resilience to somebody else.
You can teach the tools.
Yeah.
But you can't build the attribute.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle. It's like anything, right? You want to get fit, go to the gym.
Yeah.
Like there's no pill on earth going to save you, right? It might make you lose weight. It might even make you gain muscle. But you're going to know in your heart of heart you didn't do it.
Absolutely. And without the battle scars of the building, it will eventually go.
Correct.
It's like the people, I don't want to offend anyone, people who are using Ozempic right now, for example. It's like, yeah, okay, you're going to lose 10% of your body weight. Yeah. Sure. But if you don't learn how to eat healthily, if you don't exercise, whatever
there's no emotional
it's
attachment,
come back.
right? There's no emotional attachment. So you've gone through that, you've got your end result, but because you didn't put the work in yourself, there's no emotional attachment to that outcome. Right?
Yes, exactly. It's the graft that goes in.
And it's the emotional attachment that will sustain that lifestyle change. Otherwise, it's just a fad. This is why those kind of heavy diets don't work.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're punitive. They're not actually helping people. Right? Again, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this.
No, but you know when you look into the actual, the neuroscience behind it is very, very clear, is that when you restrict something and make it no-go.
It's a punishment.
But also then breaking that, fulfilling it, becomes a reward center.
Correct.
And the dopamine payoff is huge. And in the world that we live in, where we are so dopamine addicted because of our phones, because of everything else, having restriction is almost a guaranteed express way to saying you're gonna break this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, the cynic in me will say that's exactly what the industry wants.
I would agree. I would tend to agree. All right, Mark, there are 5 questions that I ask every guest. I mean, we could do this for hours. We've done this for many hours in our time together. But so 5 questions, not quick fire or anything.
Yeah.
What's the single biggest risk you've ever taken, and what was the outcome?
Oh, blimey.
I feel like there's a few that we could go down here.
Yeah, there is. What's the single biggest risk I've ever taken? I think it was kind of like betting everything on one particular job. So I kind of, like at the beginning of my career, I just decided that I wanted to be in financial markets. And so I wasn't going to settle for like a mediocre trading operation. I wanted to work for the best. And so I left, I guess a very comfortable, interesting job. Like my background was astrophysics, right? So I used to build large-scale telescopes for Cambridge University, all incredibly interesting, and doesn't pay very well. And but yeah, financial markets started to interest me, and so the biggest risk for me was like I was completely unprepared, I was completely inexperienced, but I just decided that that's where I should be. If I'm going to make this a success, I need to work with the best people. If I'm going to learn, I need to work with the best people. So basically, I was living up in Cambridge, had a young family, and for me that was a sacrifice. It might be not as big a sacrifice as some people make, but that move, if you like, from provincial, comfortable, like interesting, to something, which was completely alien to me, which was high pressure, high expectation, physically, emotionally, and mentally demanding. I wasn't prepared for it, but I made a decision, and I kind of went for it, and I got the job, and there was a price to pay, right? And so if I look back on it now and say, was the risk worth the reward? Like, I think on balance, it's made me the person I am today. But the if you like, the negative effects on maybe myself and the people around me, maybe was too much,
Although, I get the feeling that it was, at that time, it was something you felt you had to do, right?
Yeah, and I was very single-minded about it. Yeah. And I think, that's I've always been very single-minded about when I decide to do something, it gets done, I'm going to do it, right? And by hook or by crook. I think the difference today is I'm very mindful about like how I go about achieving because I'm still very like ambitious.
Yeah.
At 55, I'm still really ambitious, right? There's stuff I want to do, right? And it's like, the difference today is I'm not prepared to step on people to do it. Whereas, you know, in my early days, I was prepared to step on people to do it, right? I'd just crawl over anybody. You know, there's a mountain of fucking skulls out there that I climbed up. Do you know what I mean? To get to the top.
Do you still sleep with one eye open?
Yeah, exactly. But the trouble is, you know, when you climb that fucking mountain of skulls and you look down, you go, it's fucking lonely up here, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, the sort of, I guess, maybe it's not risk reward, but certainly the, you know, I guess the input that was required, the sacrifice, I think, you know, required to get to where I got to, on balance, would I do it again? I'm not sure. I can't say yes or no, you know, because there were some upsides to it. Because like I say, it made me the person I am.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I learned from that experience. You know, I ended up doing 23 years in financial markets, and that was pretty brutal.
Yeah, but not without its rewards.
Not without its rewards.
Not without its rewards.
Yeah.
All right, my next question for you is, what are you proudest of?
Oh, my... well, my sobriety, I guess, is the first thing, and then, you know, without a doubt, my kids. You know, I'm super proud of them. You know, they've come through... You know, a lot of people go through adversity, and I get that, but when it's personal to you, you know, my sobriety is very, very... I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of that. You know, it took... You know, not in an egotistical way, it took courage and resiliency to maintain that. It has taken courage and resiliency to maintain that.
Of course.
You know, and I'm super proud of, you know, of my kids and their resiliency, you know, under difficult conditions. I know there's plenty of people out there have it harder than my kids, you know, but it was personal for me. I saw them suffer, do you know what I mean? And now I see them grow, you know, and it's, yeah, I get quite emotional about it, you know, because, you know, they're turning into their own human beings and they're making their own choices. And, you know, I like to think that my legacy, if you like, is how I act, not what I say, you know, and a little bit has rubbed off on them. You know, the Millie story is an example. It's not, you know, I don't do it to be remembered, but let's be honest about it. When I'm dust and my name is forgotten, I genuinely believe what lives on is that essence. The way I behave will get passed down. Yeah. Passed to my kids, passed to their kids, passed to their kids, passed to the kids. Again, so it's why it's so important, you know, what we do when we're alive, you know, is practice some thought for others and the kind of, you know, and like the world we live in, you know, it's just so important for me, you know.
100%. It's an amazing answer. And I think, you know, you're so right. Again, goes back to the hard coding in DNA. You know, it literally will be hard coded.
It will be hard coded.
Yeah. You know, and when you look at the, you know, I can't remember the exact study, but the intergenerational impact of events is massive. You know, and it goes down multiple generations. From even to people who never met you, they'll still, you know, feel the impacts of the good and the bad.
I feel a lot of gratitude, you know, for my life today. You know, I was given a second chance, you know, and like, how remiss of me would it be to fucking waste that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, my next one for you is, what does it take to be successful?
Cool, dear. I mean, again, it depends on your definition of success, right? Obviously, you know, I think like if we took, let's take the monetary success out of it. That's less important to me today. I think what success for me means, you know, really, really kind of reaching the levels of my potential and actually returning that value in whatever I do, you know. So it's like, if I'm doing something, I want to be like the best at it, right? Not in an egotistical way again, but if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best at it, right? And so success for me is being able to look myself in the eye every morning and say, I'm doing my fucking best, right? Irrespective of what's going on, good and bad. I've shown up today for myself and others, and I've done my best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And I think it's the discipline that is more important than motivation in terms of showing up every day. And how much do you think sobriety has, you know, pushed forward that you're going to show up every day and do it?
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
you know,
without
it's an everyday battle, right?
It's a structure, right?
Yeah.
I have a very, very like well-defined structure around me, both you know, for my sobriety and actually it's leaked into my life, you know, my work life, my personal life. It's like the way I go about my day is I try and optimize every fucking minute, right? And I was a workaholic, and actually perversely, I was a workaholic but got nothing fucking done, right? Now I'm not a workaholic. I just use my time effectively and focus on the things that are important, you know, and that some of that is business and some of that's personal, right? And I think, again, trying to find a balance around that stuff is really important. But it's like, I just try and do my best in every area, right? And on top of that, the reason I can do that, by the way, is because I accept myself for a flawed, fallible human being who's going to make mistakes, right? I'm not going to get it right, but I've got that inner strength, or that inner kind of, confidence in myself that actually that no longer, I'm not buffeted by that kind of self-doubt or what other people think or what other people say anymore.
Yeah.
At
Amazing.
all.
Amazing.
I don't give a shit, actually.
Yeah. To be honest, I think I think all roads eventually lead to that.
Yeah, I do think it's, it's, whether they say, youth is wasted, age is, whatever it is, wisdom's wasted on the youth, or whatever it is. It's whatever it is, youth is wasted on the wisdom, whatever it is. But yeah, I think it's something that you can't teach. It sort of comes with experience. You have to kind of experience the good and the bad. And like I said to you, and have that moment, come to that conclusion that, that you're deserving of happiness, and you're worthy of contentment. And so, and that's not going to come from the bottom of a bottle of vodka, or a fucking line of Charlie, or a new car, or a new television. Yeah, those things are great, by the way. I'm a technophobe, right? I love a flat screen telly, right? It's nice, man, but it's not what defines me. It's not what makes me happy, right?
Yeah.
What makes me happy is sitting on the sofa next to my girlfriend having a cuddle watching the big telly, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think it's and it's always so good to speak to someone who's genuinely been on that journey in terms of, being in the city, in probably one of the best positions you can be in the city, and, seen through the eye of the needle and say, well, actually, there's nothing there, when it's just, when it's an end in itself. Yeah. When that is the goal, when that is the only drive, when that is the motive, it's inevitably unfulfilling. Yeah.
And it's completely counterintuitive to what we've been talking about as what makes human beings happy. Is because I'd arrive at my desk in the morning and my motivation was to fucking kill the guy next to me and kill the guy next to me, right? That was it, and make a load of money. It's very shallow.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the city's shallow. There's lots, and I've got loads of really great friends, and and actually, I think finance gets a bad press, by the way. Investment banking gets a bad press. The bank, the sort of the banking crisis and all the rest of it. But actually, fundamentally, capitalism as a principle, I'm a big supporter of it. Right, ethical capitalism, like that mechanism, actually.
Isn't that a paradox?
Yeah, maybe, but it's like, but you get greed in any any sort of like facet of business or
any hierarchical structure.
Yeah, there we go. That's the phrase I was looking for. And so capitalism in itself as a mechanism, in terms of like sort of the market mechanics, actually works really well. My job was to close price discrepancies. The fact that I made a shitload of money out of it is kind of by the by, but it's not the mechanism's fault, is it? It's the operator, right? So capitalism itself isn't bad, but people misuse it. Like, people misuse everything.
Like ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
There you go. All right, my last question for you is: 15-year-old Mark walks in the room right now. Oh, what are you going to tell him?
Jeez. Don't get a job in the city. No, that's funny actually. I told my son that. Because my son's sort of very similar to me in terms of the way his brain works. Very logical. He's ended up in data science working for Disney, and he absolutely loves it. And, he was like, he wanted to go in the city. And I said, are you really sure about that? He hasn't ended up in the city. What would I tell 15-year-old self? I was very unhappy as a 15-year-old, actually. Like, I really struggled with my teens. Constantly moved around, like, for my dad's work. Never fitted in. Yeah, I was a very unhappy teenager. And, what I would tell my 15-year-old self is you're okay. You're valued and you're loved, and it's like, you'll be all right. Yeah. Because there was a lot of self-doubt at that age. And I think, that didn't help my situation as I grew into an adult either. But yeah, and actually I do this stuff where I do these sort of visualizations in the morning. And part of that visualization is I talk to my younger self. And tell my younger self that he's valued and he's loved. And, it's very, very empowering. Yeah. And actually, that little younger self of mine just, wanders up the beach every morning as happy as Larry, and that's me,
Amazing.
Walk up the beach happy as Larry.
Amazing. Love it. Mark, thank you so much for sharing the story today. Really appreciate it. Where can people find you if you want to be found?
I'm on LinkedIn, I guess. I'm not really a social media person, so LinkedIn's probably the best place.
Amazing. Mark, you're a legend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roei.
Thanks for watching the episode. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe below so that you can support the podcast and we can keep on bringing you amazing new guests. If you want to see the other amazing episodes in this podcast, click into our series section.
As ever, if there are any other guests or topics you want us to explore, just let me know in the comments and we'll do our best to bring someone in.